defensive missile sites is now in preparation on that imprisoned island. It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere by the Soviet Union on the United States, requiring a full retaliatory response upon the Soviet Union.
Castro thought the Americans were about to attack, and he wanted Khrushchev to order those missiles fired and eliminate this scourge from the face of the earth. We'd all been lied to about it. Khrushchev had a back-channel means of corresponding with Kennedy. He lied about what he was doing in Cuba. War was likely to come, and some of those hawks were saying, "I told you so." That all of us sitting around that table could be sitting there in our last day on Earth.
The United States, as the world knows, will never start a war.
Folks, if you're just joining us, we are speaking with none other than Ky-Mani Marley. Marley, now that name is going to sound very familiar to you. Ky-Mani is indeed the son of Bob Marley. We're talking about his book, Dear Dad, Where's the Family in Our Family Today? Ky-Mani, welcome to the show and thank you for joining us. Let's jump in right away, Ky-Mani. You're on the road. Where are you right now, my friend?
I'm in California. I'm in Los Angeles right now.
Can you tell us a little bit about what brought you to the place where you wanted to write a book like this?
I think what motivated me, first of all, to write the book was just so that my fans, my friends, the people who take time to listen to Ky-Mani could get a chance to understand me on a more personal level, to understand why my lyrics is the way they are, why my approach to my music and even my approach to stage and to life in general. I thought I had an interesting story to tell that a lot of people didn't know about or wouldn't assume that the book that describes my upbringing, they wouldn't assume that that was my life, my early stages. So it was very important for me to get that out so people knew exactly who they were dealing with.
Can you tell a little bit about the story, because it was kind of at opposite ends when you hooked up with Van Halen?
Oh, yeah, that was crazy. I had just finished my album, just finished recording the album, and I was inside the office of the record company one day, and they said to me, "How would you like to go out on tour with Van Halen?" Now, my first thought was, I would love to, but I'm going to pass, because I didn't feel as though I had the record that the Van Halen fans at that time would be fans of. And then I thought about it for a second, but I have other music that I've been working on that I feel very passionate towards, knowing that this is the ultimate direction at the end of my career where I would like to be. So I decided to take the tour, to present music that are brand new, that's never been played before, never been heard before, never been recorded before. So I went out on a limb feeling as though that, okay, well, this is the way the show improved. This is the way for me to know now, do I have what it takes? So I decided to take the tour. Now, I remember taking the tour. We went into some of the early blogs and hearing some of the Van Halen fans say some very derogatory things. How is reggae going with rock, and they're going to take their pamphlets and their flyers, ball them up and throw it at the opening act. So I was going in on the intent that I had music that could relate to these fans, and I am one that sings from my heart. So, and I remember going out my first night and walking off stage to a standing ovation. And I continued that tour for 5 months. I actually ended up on the road with Van Halen for 5 months to find out that I've been the longest opening act that they ever had.
That's fantastic. And you seem surprised that you got a standing ovation. I think that speaks volumes again to your character, Ky-Mani. By the way, folks, we're speaking with Ky-Mani Marley about his music, his life. Of course, he was the son of Bob Marley. But I think that speaks volumes to the authenticity, again, of your music, where it crosses all those boundaries. Perhaps it might not be defined by boundaries. Perhaps the message is more pure than that and gets and reaches many, many people. Do you remember your dad at all?
I have one memory of my father. My father passed away when I was very young, so my only memory of my father is him picking me up and bringing me to the countryside with my older brother Stephen. Me and Stephen going down to the bush to shoot a slingshot, and I ended up losing the slingshot, and then thinking I was going to be in trouble, I walked up to him and told him that, Dad, I lost the slingshot, and he looked at me and smiled, and I walked away, and that's my only memory.
Folks, we're speaking with Ky-Mani Marley right now. He was 6 years old when his dad passed away. He is is the son of the late, great Bob Marley. We're talking about his book, Dear Dad. One of the things that I was really touched by in your book is just after your dad passed away, you were sleeping with your mom, you were in bed with your mom. I was wondering if you could tell us that story when you were woken in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I was in bed with my mom, and my mom usually goes out with her teammates. And sometimes, being that they live in the country, the teammates live a little bit closer to the town than her teammates. Her teammates would live maybe a good 45-minute walk from where we live to get to her house. I remember one night I'm in the bed, and I just felt like something reached out and touched me on my knee. So not getting up, I said to my mom, how many of us are in the bed? And she said 2. And I said, okay. And I went back to sleep, and it happened again. I said to her again, Mommy, how much of us are in the bed? And she said 2. And I asked her, are you sure? And she said yes. And I asked her, are you sure you didn't bring home Pauline with you? That's the name of her friend. Are you sure you didn't bring home Pauline with you? And she said, no, it's just 2 of us in the bed. And I went back to sleep, and she woke up in the morning and told me, you're right, there was 3 of us in the bed. Because after I said that, she fell on the bed shift, and she was trying to turn her head to look and couldn't move her head. And when she was finally able to pick her head up and look, the only thing she saw was like a faded shadow moving across the window.
What a story.
Yeah.
Wow. You're listening to The Brent Holland Show. For more information on today's guests, as well as free podcasts and downloads, please go to the www.brenthollandshow.com website. www.brenthollandshow.com. Folks, we're speaking with Kimani Marley this afternoon, the son of the late, great Bob Marley, and we're talking specifically about Kimani's life now, how he grew up, and it wasn't the way you would expect somebody from, I would call the royalty of the Marley family. The way he grew up was certainly not anything like that, and I'm going to ask Kimani about that now. What was your life like in Jamaica?
I left Jamaica when I was about 8 years old. And, I had very humble beginnings up until 18. In Jamaica, we lived in a 2-bedroom wooden house, very small yard with about 9 occupants. And we moved from there to Miami in a 2-bedroom wooden house with the same 9 occupants. But my life in Jamaica growing up was very humbling, but it do have my fondest memories as far as growing up is concerned. I was raised in the countryside where everything was just so free and loving, where every neighbor, everybody in the community was somewhat apparent to you. That was my safe haven. That's the place where I felt the safest.
Kimani, is this kind of the book I'm talking about? If your dad was sitting right in front of you, you have a great song out called Dear Dad. Are those the words that you would say to him?
Well, no, I think that if he was here right now, then I would have different words that I would say to him. Dear Dad is a song telling him that, I miss him. I didn't really get a chance to know him, and, we all wish that he was still here. But if he was here, then that wouldn't be the case.
Now, when you moved to Miami, Kimani, when you left Jamaica, again, you were not quite accepted as part of the Marley family. There was no money coming your way in terms of aid. You were kind of shunned on the outskirts of the Marley family. And when you came to Miami, you were basically out on the street trying to make a living. And I was wondering, just for the folks that are listening that may be in that same boat right now, I'm trying to inspire the folks to get across to them that no matter what your backgrounds are, you can achieve greatness like you have, with a love of humanity and forgiveness and redemption. What I want to do is try and explain to them the trials and tribulations that you experienced in Miami.
I went through a lot of trials and tribulations in Miami. Growing up in the inner city, growing up with no financial aid from the estate, we had to do whatever it is we needed to do in order to make a life, in order to eat at night, in order to have the lights on and have a roof over your head. And I faced a lot of things. I was in a neighborhood that was a drug-infested neighborhood. No, I did not have anybody looking out. There was no family member looking out or calling or asking, how am I doing, or do you have shoes to go back to school, and none of that. So, I wasn't really one to cry over spilled milk, because the wonderful thing about me, and I think growing up, was my mom and my family always taught me to fight. You know what I mean? And on that side, I had a lot of love. So I wasn't missing anything when it came down to having a caring and loving family. The only thing that we was missing were more on the economics part of things. And so, we, as a child growing up without a father, growing up in the inner city with other children, other kids around me that were growing up with our fathers too, we tend to do what we saw in the streets, and the majority of the time it wasn't always the right way to go about it, but we wasn't going to sit around and suffer. And at that same time, I knew that there was a bigger picture. I knew that what I was going through at the time that I was going through it, that couldn't be my end result. That was just another stepping stone. It was an obstacle in my way that I had to overcome. I had to find the best way to go about overcoming that. And I know that the only way to go about overcoming that was, first of all, having a love for humanity. And once you have a love for humanity, then you know that you have to be productive and positive in life. So I made steps to make sure that I achieved that.
That's perfect. That's beautiful. You also tell us that you have 3 secrets for surviving. Growing up on the streets in Miami, I was wondering if you could tell us those 3 secrets.
Well, you know, growing up in the streets of Miami, basically it was just see and don't see, hear and don't speak. And be a go-getter. We was raised in a community where you mind your own business. Like the book says, unless it affected you directly, then you mind your own business. Because if you didn't, the repercussion would be there and it will be strong. So that's the kind of community I was raised up in. It's a do-or-die community. It's a kill-or-be-killed community. So I had to adjust and adapt and make the best of that.
Let's talk a little bit how you got into music. What was the turning point that said, you know, maybe music is the way for me, just like it was for my dad?
For me, growing up, I was not really interested in doing music. And I was actually at a friend's house playing around, and an ex-producer of my father walked in and heard me on the mic, just fooling around, not thinking about music or anything, just at a friend's house. And he said to me that you have a nice tone. You should come by my studio sometime and see what we could do. And I started doing that on the weekends. One thing led to the next. I started writing songs, and one of the first songs that I wrote was Dear Dad. That caught the attention of time management and record company owners, Specialist Clifton Dillon, who at that time had Shabba, had Patra, and had Cobra. So he had 3 top artists coming out of Jamaica. And that was my first contract with Shine Records. And I say it all the time that even when I received the first contract, for me, having a music career was still something that was not stuck with me. I think what made it clear to me that music would be my path, would be what I was sent here to do. I was at a concert one time, and this gentleman walked up to me and told me that the song Dear Dad saved his life, and I was interested to know how. And what he told me was that he had lost his father 2 months before and was at home contemplating suicide. And for some reason, something said to him, press play on his CD player. Well, when he pressed play, the song Dear Dad came on. And it was at that point that he decided to put the gun down, because he felt as though that was his father telling him to play that song, to press play on the CD player. And it changed my life, because here I have a grown man in front of me literally crying like a baby, to the point where it almost brought me to tears. And to hear him say it's Dear Dad, that was the determining factor of him putting the gun down, was something that made me know that there's power in the music, and I was given a gift. We can move spirit. What we can do through music and message, there's no limit to it. And when he explained himself to me and he really touched me, it made me realize that, okay, well, this is my destiny. Now, this is what I was put here to do.
Do you feel your father was part of that destiny, perhaps looking down from above, guiding you?
Oh, yes, definitely, definitely. I know my father is with me every step of the way, because unlike the rest of my siblings, I had it very rough growing up. I'm not one to cry over spilled milk. I was raised, live my life as a rebel, and I will continue to live as a rebel and continue to fight for what is right and continue to fight for humanity and continue to fight the good fight. But I know that he is with me. He knew that my road would be a hectic one. It wouldn't be one that's easy. And I know that he was there with me every step of the way, guiding me and making sure that I was able to achieve, and I am able to pull myself up out of the situation that I'm in.
Can you talk a little bit about your mom? Because I know she was a strong role model for you and a very strong woman in her own right, and still is.
Yeah, my mom was the person that was there for me, was the person that I knew I could always turn to, no matter what the situation is. I knew that she would stand in my corner no matter what the situation is, and we would find a way to get out of it. And that's who she is now.
And how did your mom and dad meet, by the way?
My dad actually met my mom at a table tennis tournament while she was playing in Kingston.
A man like Dr. Ben Carson, who is the top neurosurgeon in the world, grew up in the ghettos of Detroit. But what would have happened to all the lives he saved had he not been brought out of the darkness by someone's love? Now, the whole book is about love, folks. Dear Dad is the book. Can you talk a little bit, perhaps, about the kinds of love, or that love that brought you out of your darkness?
I think the love that brought me out of my darkness, for me, growing up, I've always been humble. I've always been, like I said, I've always gravitated to people and people in need. I say it all the time that I'm at my best when I'm helping someone else. I'm at my happiest state when I can make somebody else smile. So I think this is just, I am the person that the Creator created me to be. I cannot deny who I am. My love for people, my love for humanity is what drives me, is what really keeps me going. You know, I'm a very simple man, and I choose to live life very simple, and I think the easiest way to get through life and be happy is just to live with love, and that's what I'm here trying to do.
Folks, our guest today is Kimani Marley, the book Dear Dad. He's the son of the late, great Bob Marley, of course. Last question for you, my friend, and it's a question I virtually ask every guest. You're virtually speaking to every university student / college-age student across Canada right now, because this show is syndicated through all those stations. There's 80 stations. Also, I would like you to give a message to those young fathers out there, because you mentioned growing up without a dad, and I know you're a dad as well now. Could you tell the young folks out there what you would say to them, and the young fathers as well?
For the young folks out there that's grown up without a dad, just to know that it's going to be rough. But it's not the end of the world. I think that we just have to focus on ourselves, know that we are here for a reason. God made us all with a reason and a purpose, and it's for us to identify what that reason and what that purpose is, and move towards that with all your might. And for the fathers out there with sons and daughters, it's very important that we communicate. It's very important that we know what's on our children's mind. It's very important that we know what motivates them and what drives them also, so that we can help them to cultivate whatever that is. I'm still learning. I'm still work in progress, so I'm looking for answers to myself.
I want to thank you so much for coming on the show this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. Love.
I sincerely want to thank Kimani Marley for coming on the show this afternoon. Just a quick quote from Bob Marley, and Kimani uses it on the back of his book, Dear Dad, and the quote is, "The harder the battle, the sweet of Jah victory." Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Thanks to one and all for joining us this afternoon. I'm Brent Holland. See you later.
A series of offensive missile sites is now in preparation on that imprisoned island. It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere by the Soviet Union on the United States, requiring a full retaliatory response upon the Soviet Union.
Castro thought the Americans were about to attack, and he wanted Khrushchev to order those missiles fired and eliminate this scourge from the face of the earth. We'd all been lied to about it. Khrushchev had a back-channel means of corresponding with Kennedy. He lied about what he was doing in Cuba. War was likely to come, and some of those hawks were saying, "I told you so." That all of us sitting around that table could be sitting there in our last day on Earth.
The United States, as the world knows, will never start a war.